institutions that have a Pan-African perspective, and now SMEs have a Pan-African market to draw from inputs and outputs. And I think they should take full advantage of that. And through perhaps an African Sun Business Network, they can begin to articulate their needs with these other Pan-African institutions. So I think this agreement is a great opportunity for SMEs in Africa, especially those producing nutritious foods, because nutritious foods really need to be traded. They are often, you find too many of them in one place and not enough in another place. And if you don't sort that out, the nutritious foods, because they are perishable, will rot and be lost. So I think trade is really important, especially within Africa, especially for SMEs, and especially for SMEs that are in the nutritious food business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hada. Thank you for that message. I agreed. The trade agreement is an opportunity for Africa SMEs to speak with a more collective voice, and that's why we created NCAFRICA. That is what NCAFRICA is about. Opportunity to trade around our neighborhood and enable SME link more closely with Pan-African organizations. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Martin Frick to give an opening remark. He will be representing Dr. Agnes Kalibata this afternoon. Dr. Martin Frick is the Deputy of the UN Secretary General, Special Envoy for the 2021 Food System Summit. Prior to this, he served as the Senior Director of UN Climate Change, where he was overseeing the implementation of the Paris Agreement and the Secretarial Climate Action Work. As Program Director for the former Secretary General Kofi Annan's Foundation, he developed the founding narrative of climate justice. As an ambassador to the international organization based in Germany, he helped build up the UN Sustainability Hub in Bonn. Welcome, Dr. Frick.
Yolande, thank you very much, and a pleasure to be here. Lawrence has just outlined the opportunity that the new agreement is for small and medium enterprises, and I think he forgot to mention one aspect of SMEs, which I find incredibly interesting, which is the ability of SMEs to innovate. They are small, they are nimble, they are often young, and they have exciting opportunities really to turn food systems around. And with open borders now, the business opportunities are massive, and that's a win-win situation. That is for the people who run SMEs to explore new markets, to go into niches where nutritious food is absolutely necessary. And it's also a better opportunity for customers to really have access to the nutritious food that they actually need. There is a lot of discussion currently going on, and you might know that in less than 2 weeks, we have the pre-summit of the UN Food System Summit. And this Food System Summit was convened by the Secretary General, particularly recognizing that food is so much more than a basic need. It is the biggest employer on the planet. It is the biggest, also unfortunately, the biggest polluter in terms of climate. It is the biggest killer of biodiversity. It is the biggest driver of deforestation. It's the biggest user of water, and so on and so forth. But it could also be the biggest driver of biodiversity. It could be the biggest solution for the climate crisis. It could be, and this is very much about the SMEs, the biggest opportunity, particularly in Africa, to provide livelihoods to young people, to provide jobs and possibility and opportunity to young people. And this is why we have been starting an engagement process which is very different from other UN summits, in inviting countries to host their own sort of smaller summits, their food system summit dialogues all over the continent and all over the world, in fact. We have 140 countries who are now committed to do national level food system summit dialogues. And I will put in the chat box all of the web links you need to find those, because I would very much like to encourage all of you to participate in this national level dialogues, to enter into discussions with your governments about the possibilities you can provide, to share with your governments what you need to better operate, and also what needs to stop, what's holding you back as businesses. And we also in this summit have now more than 700 independent dialogues, which we also use to hear from small and medium-sized enterprises, to get really all of the voices from all over the planet in to prepare the discussions which we do here in Rome on the 26th to the 28th of July, but really to bring all of these issues to heads of states and heads of government level. It's time to transform our food systems, and the small and medium-sized enterprises are the core engine here, because you're rooted in the local communities, but you're big enough to really make an impact, particularly if you take all the force of the SMEs in the continental size together. So with that, thank you very much for having me, and best of success for this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frick. We're very happy to have you here to give us insightful opening remarks. We agree there are clear opportunities for improvement, especially around innovation and the leverages with the upcoming United Food System Summit. So there are vast and dynamic opportunities to answer this call to action. And we hope that, we're starting this conversation and we're starting to call SMEs for to be able to bear the work that is ahead and put forward the strong call to action that you've brought forward. So thank you so much for that. We'll then now move to the next session remarks, where we have with us Hajia Halima Lawal, who is the Commissioner of Agriculture, Kaduna State, Nigeria. And it is a pleasure to have you with us here, Honorable Commissioner. She is the current Commissioner of Agriculture in Kaduna State and holds a BSc in Agriculture and Masters in Business Administration from Ahmadu Bello University in Kaduna State. Commissioner Halima Lawal has also obtained several relevant certificates from several local and international institutes. She is a profound veteran on financial discourses, and she holds scholarly experiences in commercial banking, development finance, financial inclusion, administration and management within and outside the African continent. So over the years, she has developed a very strong passion for matters bordering on women, inclusion, and justice. And we thank you so much for being here with us. Welcome to give your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm honored to be here as part of this conversation. It is gratifying to know that we're taking action at this moment, because our dietary imbalances and nutrition on the continent has been very well known. I particularly want to congratulate Gain and Wonderful for this initiative. This is the right time to embark on this conversation. We do know that malnutrition occurs when people do not have the right foods to eat, or they maintain a balance that doesn't provide them with the right nutrients. And particularly in Africa, because of socioeconomic and political factors, we are more vulnerable. Again, poverty is another factor that could affect the availability and affordability of these foods that ordinarily you would expect people to be able to access. Some of this, the prices of these foods are sometimes high. Sometimes it's because we don't have the purchasing power to be able to access these foods. Certainly that could be a convoluted twist now, because it makes you are poor, you can't access nutritious foods. And then malnutrition hinders you from your productivity. So again, you are exacerbating the poverty situation. So it's like a vicious cycle. And we do know the risk associated with that. It could be, especially for children who are most vulnerable, weight loss, lowered immunity to diseases. And again, that makes the cycle more profound for us. And in severe cases, we could even see malnutrition leading to death. So, but at the national level, it of course has dire consequences for us, because as we try to improve on our economic experiences, we see that economic growth is hampered, mortality rates are high, and certainly our health costs are now rising, because you now have to use more money to take care of the sick amongst us as a result of that malnutrition. So certainly it's very expensive to solve this problem, but we can all reduce that incidence as Africans if we do some more cross-cutting conversations such as this that we're having between nutritionists and people that produce the agriculturists, intersectoral coordination to bridge that gap. So we need to look at nutrition programs in the health sector being in tandem with policies or our food security programs in the agricultural sector. So that could be through stakeholder engagement, collaborations, conversations such as this. I'll bring that issue to the front burner. So by doing that, we can promote the right foods to be produced and brought to the table that are necessary to improving nutrition issues for us on the continent. We're reviewing our strategies, of course, as countries, and considering more effective nutrition-specific foods, either through supplementation or fortification. But I think with the right commitment, we can achieve that, and of course, with longer-term planning. The commitment of African countries to double agricultural productivity and scale up innovations to addressing hunger and improving food security is a potent vehicle for that, tackling poor nutrition. And the G7 countries pledged to provide multi-sector funding is also a positive development in that regard. So, but as governments, we need to take up our responsibilities and be more committed and provide more funding. But how do we support nutrition investments? For us in Kaduna State, we have provided a cross-department nutrition policy with the support of GAIN and with alignment with the federal government. Specifically the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Resources were able to domesticate the agricultural sector food security and nutrition strategy of the ministry. Through that, we raised farmers' awareness to cultivate and consume nutritious foods. We collaborated with other partners for the cultivation and commercialization of biofortified crops such as maize and orange-fleshed potatoes, sweet potato. So IITA2 has supported us in that regard. And like I said previously, that is why we need to do more closer collaboration, be it with the governments, NGOs, organized private sector to achieve that. We're also working with the Ministry of Health to develop our food policy in the state. We have had support from IITA and Cultivating Frontiers in Agriculture, that is CNFA of the USAID, to provide safe and healthy foods, because we've seen aflatoxin in maize and groundnuts, because even the handling of the post-harvest handling of our forest can lead to non-nutritious foods being available at the table. We have also implemented the World Bank Accelerating Nutrition Results in Nigeria in Kaduna State. We have a one-off response to emergency nutrition issues that came up as a result of the survey, that we have a lot of stunting malnutrition in Kaduna State. Particularly, this is one of the worst cases for the northwest of the country, but Kaduna State is like the best of the worst in that report. So that Kaduna State Emergency Nutrition and Action Plan was a direct response to that. For SMEs, we've tried to provide an enabling environment for them to thrive. We know the important role in economic developments, employment generation, agricultural productivity. So with the coming up of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we're expecting to see that as tariffs are lowered and barriers are broken, that SMEs will have the opportunity to specialize in food baskets that will be country specific or that is competitive to their country. So I expect to see, I think Dr. Frick mentioned Uganda, or was it? Nigeria will take advantage of that and be more competitive, and including, of course, market access. They'll have a wider market. Certainly, we expect that the value chains will be more developed in a structured manner. So SMEs should be able to increase their sales and businesses, attract foreign partners, because once they come as a Pan-African market, they can now be able to bargain better and attract foreign investments. Certainly that way, the capacity would also be increased and they'll reach more consumers. So we expect SMEs to witness some economics of scale so that as they catalyze, they'll be able to transform and adopt innovation and technology in their businesses. We are happy to be here, and we hope that this conversation will drive more engagement and advocacy for sustainable solution to our nutrition issues in Africa. That should involve more actions that SMEs will be able to leverage upon for their growth, and ultimately we can have abundant food supply, higher incomes, and sustainable good health on the continent, which is all a successful deliberation, and assure you about continued cooperation.
Thank you very much, Lawal, for your comments and for your reflections. As you have rightly highlighted, the challenges around nutrition in Africa are immense, and it deeply reflects the voice and foundation for this particular platform, Nutrition Conversations Africa. And as you say, therein are the challenges, but the opportunities. Policy action, multi-stakeholder collaboration, commitment, those are the things that we'll be looking forward to raising our voice towards. And we appreciate your presence and your time in this as a panel for this session. We would like to now move over to Ms. Leah Kagwara, who is a country director for GAIN in Kenya. And she give us a second remark. She has provided organizational leadership and continues to do so at GAIN Kenya, and for effective delivery of food system programs that address malnutrition in Kenya. And she is the chair of the Scaling Up Nutrition Business Network as well, a platform that brings together government, the private sector, and the development actors with a focus on food and nutrition. Karibu sana there in Swahili, and that is DC. Welcome.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me, Grace. I had a problem previously. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here to talk about this. We have been having these conversations in the last with quite a number of key stakeholders. And I'd just like to share a few things. Actually, I would like to share my screen very briefly. I hope I will get the right one. Yes, can you see that now?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk so much about GAIN. There are a number of us here from GAIN, and I know that GAIN is probably very well known by most of the participants. But what we do now to share, let me just remove something from the screen so that I can do a slideshow. Exactly. Oh, sorry, I can't reach that. Okay, I'll just keep on moving on, don't worry, so that I can save time. So the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, actually, we concern ourselves actually with addressing malnutrition. I'm really pleased to hear what, especially the last concluded speaker has talked about. We need to actually take an action on malnutrition. I want to bring you a scenario that I thought we should all see. I know there might be some people from Kenya on the call and people from around Africa. I thought this would be interesting for all of us to think about. In a recent study called The Cause of Hunger in Kenya, led by some UNs and a number of development partners and government, we realized that the economic cost of malnutrition, the economic impact is so huge that we are actually losing 373.9 billion Kenya shillings in terms of health, education, and productivity. I'd like you to know this is the budget that actually goes into all our countries for the subnational governments to be able to run development, to support education, health, infrastructure, etc. It's actually slightly less than this. And because of not addressing malnutrition, we are losing this as a country from an economic sense. And it is still being estimated that by 2030, we'll continue losing even more. And the effects of malnutrition especially concerning right now on health. One speaker has already mentioned that, on education and on economic development. These are things that many of us know. The question remains, what do we need to do? And the previous speaker has just spoken very well about addressing food systems. Again, and especially in GAIN Kenya, we are thinking we need to change the situation by changing the affordability, availability, desirability of nutritious foods. If we're going to do that, if we're going to make nutritious food affordable and available so that we can turn around the situation that is being made worse by malnutrition, we have to address food systems. Who is food systems? On this, and many of you might have seen this many times, it's a global report. The drivers of food systems, when we start to think again, we realize that many of them are businesses. Most of them are businesses. SMEs are playing a huge role in any country in Africa, contributing to over 70% of GDPs, 70% of food being consumed, etc. So if you look at this, you can see that all these items included here, they have something to do with the business. And many of these actually happen to be SMEs. But as we have realized, food system actors are not working well enough. They are not working. They are not doing as they should be doing. So if many of those are businesses and SMEs, don't we need to be doing something? And so this conversation is so prime. And so we propose to do three things that are pretty obvious. Sometimes they sound obvious, but they're not easy when it comes to actual practice, as I've already mentioned on a previous slide, to increase demand, to increase access, and an enabling environment. And I just want to go to this last slide and talk a little more about that. We are talking about SMEs today, but I want to suggest that we move this conversation beyond SMEs. Let's talk about public-private engagement. Government is key. The previous speaker, who is a government person, I think I didn't forget her title, has really emphasized on the role that government is playing. And so here we are saying, we need to speak with governments. We need to engage governments to create an enabling environment, to make it easy for SMEs to provide, to avail, to process, to label, to do all these other things so that nutritious food can be more accessible. But besides government, civil society is playing a key role, and sometimes no attention is paid to what they're doing. Civil society, international organizations supporting a lot of agribusiness, work on the farm, increase productivity, and many of those that we interact with, many times we find that nutrition was not a question that was brought on the table when programs were being designed. But finally, I just want to say, engaging SMEs in the right way, and I just want to emphasize how we do it at GAIN. We work quite closely with SMEs because we realize that they are very, very crucial to local food systems. In the local food system, cycle we've just seen, they are a key actor. And so I saw a question on the chat, somebody asking what kind of support can be provided to SMEs. And what we do is actually provide technical, make sure that they are more knowledgeable. They are getting innovative. They can innovate so that they can provide more affordable, better packaged, in packages that are more accessible, especially to the bottom of the pyramid. We provide financial assistance, but not just to give grants. It's financial assistance that's well thought through. We've gone through all the assessment and ensured that this SME can absorb productively whatever financial assistance, but also can be able to finance gaps or can access finance elsewhere. We support them to build demand for products that they are working with. And of course, we support them to ensure that the foods are nutritious before they get to the consumers. And Lawrence, our director, talked about the SBN platform. I had just thought about that, and Woodwork is good you're here. It's something that we need to be thinking about. Can we think about a regional Pan-Africa SBN platform? Can we speak across the continent? When I showed you the expenditure of the cost of hunger report, I was thinking, what's happening in other African countries? We would like to see those figures. We would like to look at each country. Can we then put our heads together, bring our SMEs on the same platform, share learning, share networks, linkages where we can get more support, etc. And so with those few remarks, excuse me, I look forward to a very productive discussion with very actionable recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kagwara. You're putting in such clear perspective and ended that session on such a high note, because I believe all of us can agree that as a continent, a multi-sectoral approach is critical in transforming our food systems. And you've given us an opportunity to think, you have given Kenya as a case study, but what indeed is happening in other African countries. And that is what Nutrition Conversations Africa platform is about, where we can all come together, drive these conversations, put together this information and knowledge for all of us to learn from and to be able to build upon. So I will invite my colleague Yewande so that she can take us through the panel session. And then we shall have towards the end of the session, the questions and answer briefly. So continue to put in your questions and answers, your questions in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. So our topic for this session is how nutritious food SMEs can leverage on the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I like some of the points Leah had mentioned. This would actually set the scene for that. So joining us today, we have 4 distinguished panelists. Please continue to put your questions in the Q&A box. I see a lot of questions in the chat box. Please put it in the Q&A box. I'd like to begin this discussion with Uduak Ebeka. She is the African Manager for the Scaling Up Nutrition Business Network, SBN, a leading private sector focused nutrition initiative, which drives private sector contribution to improve nutrition in line with the priorities of government. She has over 9 years experience working across large-scale food fortification, home fortification, promotion of biofortified crops, social behavioral change communication, and a wide spectrum of public-private engagement in nutrition. Uduak is a 7th commissioner for the Commission of Sustainable Agriculture Intensification. Welcome, Uduak.
Thank you, Yorandi. Pleased to be here.
Uduak, what are some of the opportunities for nutritious food SMEs? How can they benefit from the intercontinental trade?
I think most of it has been articulated by all the speakers who have said something this morning. I think the opportunity is huge. This is a time when businesses need to begin to think beyond their previous scope. You need to begin to think about expanding and really scaling up your operations and how you can improve access to safe, nutritious foods, not only in the country of your operations, but beyond your borders as well. I still think that a lot needs to be done in informing SMEs that this trade agreement actually exists. Now, it's one thing for us in the development sector to know this and to have this understanding, but a lot more awareness needs to be done to really drive the information to the grassroots about the opportunities that exist with this trade, with the ratification of this trade agreement. Now, various government bodies have made pledges about supports that will be made available once the trade agreement being Pan-African trade kicks off. And it's a time for SMEs to really broaden their knowledge of these support systems and mechanisms and take advantage of them. This is an opportunity to really pull in some foreign reserves, trading across the border beyond your local currency. It's an opportunity to gain more knowledge, to understand what the competition is doing and what the innovations in your field of operations are, and how you can also make your offerings more unique. It's a time for SMEs to start thinking more broadly and to be really innovative, thinking outside the box, because now it's a period where there will be a lot of competitions, not only from within the country but from across the border. How do you raise the standard of what you're producing and such that it is appealing and acceptable to those that could be your customer base beyond your borders? Now, we say that in some cases, consumers think that imported or foreign goods are better because they have the perception that the quality is higher. But now is the time for us to really promote our indigenous foods and products and raise the standard such that the consumers have a mindset change, and most of these products are a lot more acceptable. We have talked about indigenous foods that are nutritious, that have been lost over the years due to importation of cheaper options. But now is the time for us to really promote those nutritious indigenous foods and expand their availability beyond our borders. So I think it's a very good time for us to be having this conversation. It's a good time for SMEs to be more aware of what is going to be happening within their socioeconomic sphere and their ecosystem, and to take advantage of the opportunities as it has presented itself.
Thank you, Uduak. And I agree with Uduak. It's the opportunity for SMEs to be innovative, and more importantly, create nutritious products from our indigenous local foods. So there's always an opportunity there for SMEs and people looking to go along that path. To build on this conversation, I would like to introduce Khadija Churchill. She is the CEO and founder of Kwanze Tukule Foods in Kenya, a cashless mobile-based business that is using technology to create a more efficient and effective supply chain for the street food industry. After living and working in London for nearly 11 years, Khadija returned to her home country in Kenya in 2017 to establish Kwanze Tukule, which means first let's eat in Swahili. The establishment of the startup is drawn out of a passion to use technological innovations and advancements to solve societal problems sustainably. Good morning, good afternoon, Khadija. Are you with us this afternoon? I see Khadija on there. Can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon, Kenya. So Khadija, what are some of the trade barriers nutritious food SMEs face on the continent, and how can SMEs tap into the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for growth and sustainability? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I agree with the previous speaker on most of the comments that were made. Just to reiterate some of the comments that have been made, I think some of the challenges is lack of awareness, in effect, of the opportunities that SMEs can leverage that already exists. So as a startup or as an SME, there's very little information out there of how you can trade between countries. So if, for example, we're looking to import beans from Tanzania, what are some of the things that you need to be aware of? What are the things that you can take advantage of? What are the policies that exist? Or what are the kind of crops that are being promoted that you can sort of push in your country? So awareness is huge, and understanding. And for SMEs, the resources are very limited. So ability to go out there and look for this information yourself can be a lot challenging. But I think the opportunities that now we've got for ourselves is, in effect, what we will have access to is a huge market, a huge network, and ability for SMEs to collaborate so that we're able to speak with one voice is critical, because now is the time when policies are being discussed, when initiatives are being looked at. So ability to represent the interest of the SMEs so that policies that are favorable to SMEs are implemented. Sometimes the policymakers or the decision makers are not also aware of how much involvement the SMEs have or how much knowledge the SMEs have in terms of local tradings between countries. So, so that would be important. Also, it's critical for the SMEs to learn some of the regulations that will come out of this. In effect, there will be laws that will promote some certain practices of trades, and there will be laws that will prevent some certain aspects of practices and trades. So ability to know what those are and then take advantage or leverage that to grow your business is critical. So as I said, I think it's a huge opportunity. The collaboration bit would be critical to enable SMEs, A, understand what is out there, B, know how to leverage, and C, how to collaborate to take advantage or leverage those opportunities to grow businesses further. Thank you.
Thank you, Khadija. Thank you. And I agree with you. Awareness, advocacy, and policy are key areas for improvement for SMEs, and collaboration is critical, is key for us to be able to thrive in this economy. So thank you very much for that. I see the questions in the Q&A box. Please continue to put your questions in the Q&A box. For the next speaker, I'd like to introduce Dr. Martin Fregene. He's the Director of Agriculture and Agro-Industry at African Development Bank. Dr. Fregene developed the first molecular genetic map of cassava and started the development of improved cassava varieties for various agroecologicals of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He began his career at IITA Ibadan, where he was a recipient of the Rockefeller Foundation postdoctoral fellowship on genetic mapping. That took him to the International Center for Tropic Agriculture. After CIAT, he joined the BioCassava Plus project at the Danford Center, where he rose to the position of director for the project. Dr. Fregene, good morning in your time here. Are you with us this morning?
Yes, good morning, Yewande.
Dr. Fregene. Dr. Fregene, access to finance is one of the challenges faced in the nutrition landscape. What are the financing opportunities available for nutritious food SMEs in Africa?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Yewande, for the invitation, and it was good to hear Lawrence Haddad and David Frick and other speakers talk about the importance of SMEs. SMEs, as you know, play a critical role in food systems. It's estimated that 80% of all food consumed in Africa goes through the hands of SMEs. Unfortunately, they are faced with several challenges, including financing that I will address. And since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, SMEs have been hard hit. The restrictions on movements and also cross-border trade have really affected them. As David Haddad and Lawrence Haddad said earlier, SMEs are very important for cross-border trade. There's some food baskets in Africa. For example, Uganda is a food basket, Zambia is a food basket, and all around South Sudan, for Uganda, Kenya, they all get food, and it's mostly handled by SMEs. Same also in Zambia, in DRC, Angola, they all get food, and it's also handled by SMEs. SMEs are extremely important. And just if I talk about finance, the Africa Continental Free Trade area has actually created huge opportunities, because once we can get over the obstacles like food safety certification, road infrastructure, cross-border trades, and then also things like digitization of export-import processes, SME, you're going to open a huge opportunities for SMEs. But before I come to all that, let me just talk about financing. SMEs, like have also been called the missing middle. They usually require financing from anything as low as $2,000 all the way to $2 million. And most commercial banks, are kind of worried about financing them. So what we have done at the bank is threefold. The first one is what we call the wholesale credit guarantees schemes. We offer banks to cover up to 80% in some instances of their losses if they lend to SMEs. So we have the Africa Credit Guarantee Fund that was set up, way back with the support of the Danish government and Spanish government. And they actually provide wholesale guarantees to many, many commercial banks in Africa. We also have recently launched our AFAWA, that's the Facility for Women in Agriculture, that again also provides wholesale guarantees. AFAWA is about $300 million. And we hope to leverage 5 to up to 10 times financing for commercial banks through wholesale guarantees. So that's the very first one, wholesale guarantee programs. In the second one, we also realized that SMEs require direct cash also. So we have launched what we call the agribusiness deal room that actually complements efforts of banks. The agribusiness deal room actually tries to get equity for SMEs. And This operates as our African Investment Forum that holds every year in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we have been successful to mobilize direct equity for several SMEs. Also, we also have, specifically for Kenya, the African Development Bank provided a line of credit of $100 million to Equity Group Holdings to actually support SMEs. And that loan is targeted to SMEs. Again, we realized that some of these SMEs are not in agriculture, so we have created what we call the Africa Financing Facility for Food and Nutrition Security. This is a new fund that is going to be announced at the UN Food Systems Summit in September by our president, Dr. Adesina. And that fund actually is going to target specifically SMEs. We're also working with others, including again and many others, on the catalytic financing for SMEs, again under the auspices of the United Nations Food Systems Summit. But having said all that, just before I stop, I just want to mention that even with the financing, you still have to help SMEs overcome the barriers, reduce the transaction costs. So the bank is actually financing a lot of cross-border road infrastructure, that's roads between countries, and also cross-border trade, especially digitization of export and import processes, and most importantly, food safety laboratories. Often before you move food across borders, you'll be asked for certification of the safety of that food. The commissioner for the Continental was talking about the aflatoxin in maize. Those food safety certification actually helps to guide against such things coming. The bank is actually financing 11 food safety laboratories under the AUC to actually provide certification for cross-border trade. Let me stop here. I'm back to you, Yewande.
Thank you, Dr. Fergana. Thank you. And I like that you have mentioned some of the programs available from the AFDB. And I want to make sure that entrepreneurs, SMEs are able to take advantage of these programs and the new upcoming program. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to turn to Mike Kunga, a nutrition professional with many years experience working with civil societies, private sector, and government to address high levels of malnutrition in Malawi. Mike is a strong youth leader for nutrition, youth champion for Ask for Food, Ask for Change campaign, and he currently serves as the vice chair for the UN Food Systems Summit Action Track 5. Mike Kunga, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Andy.
Mike, how can we get more youths like you, very impressive resume, more youths like you motivated to be value chain actors in developing nutritious, innovative foods?
Well, thanks so much. And I think from that question, a lot of previous speakers have already tackled, especially on the angle of finance. And let me also say that within my capacity as the vice chair for Action Track 5, I have done a number of engagements with youth around Africa, where I've developed a blog concerning how young Africans can transform food systems. And when I was interacting with many of them, the challenges that they were putting forward was around finance, capacity, knowledge, and science. So when it comes to really finance, you understand that for young people or young entrepreneurs, for them to boost their business, they need to have technology, they need to have equipment. But how much do they access loans or money to boost their business? So that's a critical challenge. And with this trade opportunity that is in place, we need to really think of how we can empower young people to be able to access loans. We talk of the microfinancing. If we are able to make sure that these young people are able to attract these loans, they'll be able to boost their business. At the same time, let me also say that on policy, within our government or within institutions, we have to thoroughly look in terms of how we can transform these policies so that they should empower young people into agriculture or labor force. For instance, you understand that agriculture is the most probably system or where young people, a lot of young people are working, but you also know that around 39% actually of young Africans are extremely poor or moderate poor, and these are the ones who are involved in agriculture. So we need to really think of how we can incentivize agriculture so that it should be able to attract young people. Talking of how we can use the modern technologies for farming, for processing, so that young people should be able to be empowered. And the previous speaker talked of knowledge. Knowledge is a key. And we really understand that a lot of people are attracted to buying foods outside because they don't trust foods which are in Africa. So we need to think of how we can empower even the young people in the grassroots level to really understand that every food that is produced within the area should be able to nourish them. So we also need to think of policies around that. And the least one, which maybe I need to focus especially on this African trade opportunity, is the barrier or is the equal opportunity for even young entrepreneurs in the grassroots aspect. So you understand that when we talk about SMEs, we should not only focus the SMEs who we know in the cities or within our district, but we should also really to narrow down to the grassroots level to really understand what are the products which are produced by young entrepreneurs in these rural areas, and how can we empower them for them to be able to have the same opportunity as the big SMEs to participate in trade. Once we really strike the balance between the two, we'll be able to champion young people into agriculture and even into trade. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. And it's critical for inclusion to include SMEs in remote areas. So that is key. Thank you very much for that. And what I would like to say is I want SMEs or entrepreneurs to think when they're being creative and being innovative, they're just not thinking of creating a food, but they're also thinking of nutrition as key, important role. Thank you to all the discussants for your insight and perspective. I'll let Grace take over from here as we transition into the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know we only have 4 minutes to the top of the hour, but the questions are remaining. There's a lot of engagement on the Q&A chat, so I'll select a few, and I have reached out to the panelists directly to take some of the questions. Those that will not be answered at this session, I encourage you to reach out to us, the organizers, separately, and we will do all we can to get you the responses that you require. So I'll begin with a question that was raised in 2 parts that I have selected for Uduak. And the question that has been asked is, do you have examples of how countries can promote the cross-border trade in food? And how can they prioritize the most nutritious food as beneficiaries of interventions? And then the second part, the question is asking, is any sub-region in Africa leading the way in promoting export markets for agri-food SMEs? And if they are, what are they doing that other regions and countries may learn from? Over to you, Uduak.
So now, how do we promote how can countries promote the cross-border trade in food? I think first and foremost, it's to educate the businesses on what the cross-border standards are. So what standard should your food products be at for you to be able to export from your country to another country, and then support businesses to be able to raise the standard of their products, such that they are acceptable across the border. What was the second part of the question? Oh, and then it's asking how can they prioritize the most nutritious foods? Now, what is most nutritious? It varies from one context to the other. I think it's important for us to have nutrient profiling of foods. And when that is done, you can then have a broader understanding of what your potential customer country prioritizes in terms of their needs, their nutritional needs, because what is a public health issue in one country may not be a public health issue in another country. So it's understanding what are the priorities in these various markets, and how do you then prioritize what you should be exporting to these different markets. Then the second question is on the sub-region in Africa leading the way in promoting export markets for agri-food SMEs. Now, when I think about exporting food, the first country that comes to my mind, and a lot of data has shown this, is South Africa. South Africa has put a lot of effort in place to support their businesses to improve the quality of their foods. Their packaging alone is so attractive and makes them compete significantly on the shelves of products or market shelves against products in other countries. So this is something that South Africa has done very well. The government has invested substantially in market intelligence for their businesses. So there are reports that are provided to private sector that provides them on market insights into what is required, what is being requested in other countries, what are consumer behavioral patterns in other countries, such that the businesses in South Africa can utilize these reports and target the production of their food products, the packaging such that it is more appealing, and also the price point. Because across Africa, consumers are very price sensitive. And so if you have infrastructure in your country that drives down your cost of production, then your product becomes competitive when it goes across the border. And South Africa has done that very well. I mean, we're talking about things like even investments in laboratories where businesses can take their products for analysis, understand what the nutritional content of their product is, and then know if that product can then go across the border. So we can, borrow a leaf from what South Africa has done, the kind of investments they have made across the continent, and see how we can support our SMEs to also be as competitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Goodluck. We have a question here that is touching on markets, which I would like to bring to your attention, Ms. Kagwara, because I know you have done quite significant work in that area, where one of the participants would like to know, asks, a lot of the SMEs are in the informal sector, and by extension, the informal sector loses out on benefits from the public sector. So can anyone share ideas on how African SMEs, especially those in the informal sector, can integrate into formal markets? And what do they need to become formalized before they can do so?
Yeah, interesting question. That, as I mentioned, that we provide our SMEs a platform. Of course, SBN, the Sun Business Network, in many places where GAIN or WFP is working. So if GAIN is not in your country, you could check WFP if they have that platform. What we're trying to do with our SMEs is actually to make sure they become formal. When we meet them, many of them are very basic. I think some speakers have already mentioned that. They are not even, some are not even bankable. They may be putting some money in the bank, but very informally. Some don't have any documentation at all. So when I talked about technical support, this is the kind of thing we try to do. So when we realize that an SME has potential to grow, we bring on experts to help them to get more formalized, to get more, technical, to begin behaving like a business that can be attractive, fundable, bankable, etc. And that doesn't stop there. We, as Goodluck is mentioning, we also try to support them to get innovative. Sometimes they're doing basic things. They're just doing milk. They're just selling milk, in its basic form. Can they get a bit more innovative to get that milk processed, pasteurized, packaged? Can they make yogurt? Can fortify yogurt? I just used an example of milk, but there are many other things that they do. Khadija here, who is on the call, is one of our SMEs who is using improved technology to actually bring safe and nutritious food on the streets to casual workers. So the last thing that we actually do is to help them get onto the market. So when they have products, many times, as Goodluck is saying, our SMEs products are very uncompetitive. Who will know? They go into kiosks, they go into mama burgers, the ones that sell on the ground. Who is gonna know? So again, we try to support them with market activation, to try and do market assessments. Are the products acceptable? Who is gonna be their likely customer? All those things that they struggle with. And that we have seen helping a good number of our SMEs be able to scale and also get a bit more formalized. Actually, we've seen some of them attracting support, not necessarily financial, from other players, sometimes financial, and sometimes they're able actually to go to the bank and be able to get even financial support. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. We have a question here for Dr. Fergen. I think you touched a bit on food safety, and we do have some questions for you here where the feeling is that, food safety issues are quite expensive. So some of the questions that are coming through is, food safety compliance systems are expensive, and how do SMEs then, in terms of food and health standards and sanitary and phytosanitary measures not being harmonized, how can they overcome these barriers?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Grace. That's a very good question. SMEs who want to export and want to fulfill all the requirements, by the importing country, often face a phalanx of different requirements. I know even not just SMEs, even big companies like Nestle have complained to the bank, saying that if they are going to bring in a product into Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya, they have to do multiple tests for each country just to be able to get those products accepted. That's why the AUC came up with the idea of a food safety network and a harmonized protocol for moving things all around Africa. And I spoke earlier about the bank financing these 11 laboratories all across. Hopefully, we're not there yet, but hopefully we will get to a point when all you just need to do is send it to one of those laboratories, have your product certified as free from pathogens or free from heavy metals and things like that. And with that, you should be able to move it all across. It's an initiative of the AUC, because otherwise it's just too much cost. Even for a big company like Nestle, it's just too much cost to be able to meet all the requirements, food safety requirements, for each country by SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the last question we're going to take is wider for the audience, or rather for the panelists, in terms of data, information hub, knowledge hub with regards to the topic of today. That has been brought up, because access to data is also something that is quite a barrier for most of these SMEs. So does any of the panelists have a platform where they can refer the participants in terms of getting access to data for just for them to be able to scale up their businesses?
Sorry, Grace, the question is vague. Data to scale up business.
So let me actually read it as is.
Please.
Smallholder farmers produce up to 70% of Africa's food, yet advancement in technology and access to data that can provide solutions to see to the few large-scale farmers who can avoid it. So how can we get it to the majority producers who can't? I don't know if that is clear enough.
Well, I think data resides within multiple silos. And knowing where to go to access data is one thing, and being able to interpret that data is something else. So in various countries, you may have bureaus of statistics who are responsible for collecting data and supporting potential users on how to interpret that data. For agribusinesses, the natural gravitation is towards their ministries of agriculture, who have departments that are also responsible for collecting data and also supporting farmers to use that data. And in some cases, you have farmer associations that also have access to this data. So I think being able to connect with the relevant mechanisms or platforms who, frequently collect data would be something that is important. And then also connecting with your national Scaling Up Nutrition Business Network is also a good platform or good way to begin to be part of something that is bigger than yourself and gain access to information that may not be readily available to you as an individual business or SME. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edward. I want to wind up the Q&A session there. And like I said before, the questions are many, and so we will take them. And please do send them. The email has been shared with you there to info@nutritionconversationsafrica.org. We shall be able then to connect with the right resources that you require. I think we underestimated just how much time we need for this engaging conversation, as it shows SMEs play a critical role in this space. So I would want to once again thank each one of you for participating in this webinar, to our panelists, our participants for keeping the engagement up and for joining us from all over the world and from Africa as well. We have had a great time here, and this is going to be a monthly event, Nutrition Conversations Africa webinar, and we shall be inviting different stakeholders to speak on different topics. So definitely keep it here and on our social media handles. I would also just want to invite Yewande for a final word, then we can wrap up.
Thank you, Grace. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been very engaging. We expected it would be an hour, but it's been more than an hour. So we'll keep that in mind next time. Please continue to follow our social media pages. A lot of engagement coming across social media, and the webinar will be consistent. And we want to hear from the different people, what are some of the challenges we face in Africa and how we can address it, because we have people like Dr. Vergene, we have Leah, we have Udrak, and we have people in the nutrition space that can help, and we have Gain. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. We appreciate your time.
Thank you once again. And as we say in Kenya, asanteni sana.
And the finals will be Roman numerals.
Yes.
Yes.
See you next time. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.